Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Sonar Fishing. Today on this video, it's a really great topic because we're going to be talking about how to rig one of the most important rigging techniques in bass fishing for rigging a soft plastic bait and presenting it on the bottom. And of course, we're talking about the old ball and chain, the Carolina rig. And a Carolina rig, essentially, we're gonna dive into it here. We've got all the different components that we need for the Carolina rig right here, just kind of on the deck of the boat. But we're gonna be putting it together and creating this rig. And I'm gonna go through all the different nuances of the tackle. But one thing I want to kind of mention first off is that this is as beginner as you want or as advanced as you want. I'm going to be showing you the exact tackle that I use in tournament competitions for the Carolina rig, but I'm not saying that you have to use this exact tackle system that we're going to be showing you on this video to be successful with a Carolina rig. You could use, instead of the tungsten weights that I'm going to be showing you, you can use lead. You can use less expensive barrel swivels, or you can use glass beads if you want. Really, you don't have to break the bank to be able to do well with a Carolina rig. That's one of the great things about a Carolina rig. It's designed to be simple and present a bait in a more natural manner. And it does that. We call it the ball and chain because it really incorporates a pretty heavy weight, usually like 3/4 ounce to 1 ounce or something in that range to maintain bottom contact. But the difference between the Carolina rig and, say, a Texas rig is that weight is separated by a leader, or the bait and the weight are separated by that leader, which means that the weight or the bait does not have any weight that is encumbering its action, and it allows that bait, as the weight is drug along the bottom, to just nice and naturally float behind that bait and follow the weight. So that is what the Carolina rig does really well. I've done videos on this technique before. I've won a lot of money on the Carolina rig. It's really well suited for scenarios where you're not around a ton of cover. It's not good in grass. It's not good in a really chunky rock like riprap or something like that. It tends to snag a lot in those scenarios. But if you have a nice, clean bottom area that's composed of sand or little rocks or gravel or shells, that is the deal. Carolina rig is probably the best way to present a soft plastic bait in that type of scenario. So anyways, without further ado, let's go ahead and talk about the components of a Carolina rig and then dive into, the nuances of rigging this technique. It's a little bit more intensive than, say, a shaky head or a Texas rig. It's similar to like a drop shot, rigging a drop shot, as far as like the steps and the tackle and things like that. So, all right. So the main thing that makes a Carolina rig is the big weight that we're going to be using. This right here is a 3/4 ounce tungsten weight. Again, you can use lead. Lead is not as sensitive as tungsten. Tungsten is so dense that it really transmits everything that you're feeling on the bottom, which is really important with a Carolina rig, back to your rod tip. And of course, your rod has a lot to do with that too, and the line that you use. We're going to talk about that. But so you've got that heavy weight bullet sinker. Then you've got a bead, okay, that you put on the line behind the bullet sinker to protect the knot and also create a little bit of a clacking sound and things like that. And then you've got a barrel swivel, okay? The barrel swivel is the last component before you get to the leader. All right, and talking about leader, and this is kind of out of order here, but the main line that we're going to be using, okay, is going to be something heavy, 17, 20-pound test. You do not want to go light. My preference is a fluorocarbon for a couple reasons. Number one, fluorocarbon is really good as far as abrasion resistance on the bottom, especially something like Seagar or Brazex. It also sinks. So as opposed to like braid or monofilament, it sinks, and so you have more of a direct line of contact with the presentation, with the Carolina rig on the bottom, so it's more sensitive. It's not more sensitive than braid. Let's keep that clear, because braid doesn't have any stretch, so the braid is very sensitive. But the fluorocarbon just is perfect. It doesn't snag as much as braid does, and it still has that sensitivity. And braid has that floating quality. And also another thing, another reason why I personally don't use braid for my main line with a Carolina rig is because you're also dealing with a monofilament or fluorocarbon leader, and that is the weak link. And when you take an extremely strong and low stretch, or really no stretch line, and you pair it with something that does have stretch and it's not as strong, that's a recipe for disaster. That is the weak link in the chain, and you don't want to be breaking leaders. So I like to have a little bit of stretch in my Carolina rig mainline. So 17 or 20 pound test fluorocarbon is what I recommend. But again, you can use monofilament if you're on a budget and that's what you have, but just make sure that it is a heavy monofilament line. And monofilament, is fairly good for abrasion resistance. But again, I just think the sensitivity qualities and also having that stretch with mono or fluorocarbon is a big deal. So, all right, so moving on to the leaders. So the leaders that we're going to use, I like to use the same type of fluorocarbon personally. I use a Brazex, and I usually use 15 or 12 pound test line. Okay, so it's lighter than the main line generally. This may change if I'm fishing really dirty water and I don't feel like those fish are line shy at all. I might just go with the same 17 or 20 pound test. But in general, I like to have a lighter line as the leader that allows you to, the bait to have a little bit more natural, free range of motion type of deal. And also, in clear water, you want a line that's not as obvious to the fish to where they're line shy. However, with that being said, if you're on a budget and all you have is 15 to 20 pound test for the main line, use that for your leader too. I don't care. You're still going to catch fish. Keep it simple. That's what I say. But if you're trying to fine tune your presentation, 12 and 15 pound test leader, fluorocarbon leader is going to be a deal, or like 14 pound test. Finally, let's get down to the hook. So that's the business end of the whole setup. We'll also talk about some baits. I forgot to grab some baits, but this right here is the style hook that I like. I like to use a fairly medium, light or medium wire EWG style hook. This one is the one I like. So this is the Hayabusa Crossbred. This is the 971 that is really new, and it's kind of a cross between a traditional round bend offset shank hook and an EWG. So I feel like it splits the difference perfectly, especially when you're fishing like a straight tail, thinner bodied worms and things like that. And then also swapping between those and creature baits. So it has a wider gap overall than a round bend, but not quite as wide as an EWG. So anywhere from 3/0 to 5/0 is going to handle everything that you need to do. So let's go ahead and dive into rigging it. Oh, before we get started, let's actually talk about the tackle. So I think the rod's really important. The reel is not as important for a Carolina rig. You can optimize it, and you can definitely find the perfect reel for a Carolina rig. But overall, it's just about having, a good casting reel. Anywhere, somewhere in the like moderate, a gear ratio range, something in the 7s or 8s at the high end is going to work great for this, because you're just really using it to reel in the fish and also reel in slack as you're dragging the bait. But the rod, you need to have a nice, usually at least 7.3, but I usually use a 7.5 foot either. If it's a pretty heavy, medium heavy, I'll use one of those, but usually it's like just a heavy flipping stick that I like to use. This right here is the Okeechobee rod from Fitzgerald, and this is a good one. They also have one that's a 7.5 heavy action that is the Brian Schmidt series Carolina rig rod. That's a really good one. I just got lazy and didn't grab it from over there. And then also like the 7 6 medium heavy all-purpose series from Fitzgerald is a really good Carolina rig rod. But I like to have a longer rod because you're dealing with a rig that is much longer than most, and so you need that extra length to do that nice roll cast, that nice lob cast. It's not a roll cast, not a roll cast at all. It's actually a lob cast. So you're just kind of side, sweeping and loading that rod and then chucking that thing out there. So those are that's all the tackle that I use with a Carolina rig, minus the baits that we'll talk about. But all right, so let's go into how to rig your Carolina rig. So this right here is the main line, okay, coming off your reel. The very first thing you're going to put on is you're going to slide on your bullet sinker, okay? 3/4 ounce to 1 ounce bullet sinker. You're just using it to maintain bottom contact the whole time. Slide that on there like so. So the cupped portion of it is facing back towards the end of the line. And then from there, we're going to add our bead. A bead is very important with a Carolina rig because it protects the knot from that big weight bumping into it constantly. And it also makes some noise. I highly suggest that you use a bead that is optimized for use with tungsten. Even if you're not using tungsten, you're using like lead, using a bead that is good for tungsten is going to, it's just not going to chip. And when you use like a glass bead like we all used to use, if that chips, you're going to cut your line and you're going to lose a fish. So I would highly suggest finding a bead that is chip free like these. This is the Fitzgerald bead, flipping bead, but I use it for the Carolina rig. And all the products are going to be in the description below, like I said. So if you're looking for any of this stuff, it'll be below. The next thing, so you've got the weight free floating on there, and you've got the bead free floating on there as well. Okay. The next thing you're going to do for the main line portion of the Carolina rig is to tie on your barrel swivel. Now you can use a polymer knot. That's the first knot that I learned how to use. Or if you're using fluorocarbon, I highly suggest you learn how to tie the San Diego jam knot. I'm going to sort of show you how to do it real quick. It's a little bit harder with the barrel swivel because it's not enough weight to really help control everything, but we'll do our best. So one of the things I do with the San Diego jam knot is, I'll take it and pinch it like this, and then I'll have a finger down here putting pressure in this loop that we created, all right? And then I'm going to take that tag in and wrap it around while pinching up here. There's a loop that I'm pinching up here on this hand. But I'm going to take that tag in and wrap it around about 6 times. 3, 4, 3, 4. Let's just pretend that that's 6 times. So from there, we're going to go through the loop that is on the bottom here. Okay. So there's a loop down here. We're going to bring that tag in through the loop. It's hard to see. And then we're going to bring it through the top loop as well. All right. And then you're going to tighten it down, wet it, or send it home and clip off that end. Don't do it with your teeth, even though I do it all the time. All right. So now you have the weight side of the Carolina rig done. So right there, you got the swivel, you got the bead protecting the knot a little bit and creating extra sound, and then you got your weight. All right. So from here, we've got a little bit of leader material. Again, if you're on a budget and you just have one spool line, just use the main line. Come on, let's not make fishing more complex than it needs to be. So you got a leader. So the length of the leader really depends on a lot of different factors. Again, keep it easy. Just make it about, I don't know, 18 inches or so. That's a good all-around length. But the general rule, if you're trying to fine-tune the presentation, is the dirtier the water, the shorter the leader. The more action you want to the bait, to the bait that you're presenting with the Carolina rig, the shorter the leader. Okay, because as soon as you move that weight, the bait moves with it. Conversely, the clearer the water, the longer the leader that you want. Sometimes we go up to 4 foot, maybe even more. In crystal clear water, you want separation, more separation between the weight and the bait. And also, if you want less action, you want more natural, just kind of gliding action of the bait, the longer the leader you want to put on your Carolina rig, because it's so far away from the weight, it doesn't tend to have that jerking motion as much. It's because it's not as close to the weight. So overall, that's kind of the general decision-making process you got to go through when you're deciding whether or not to use a long leader or a short leader. But for the sake of this video, if you're a beginner, just keep it simple. Pull out, about 18 inches, 2 feet, something like that. Put it on there. But we're going to use the same knot that we used to tie the one end of the barrel swivel. So we're going to do the San Diego jam knot again. All right, or your favorite knot, whichever one. All right, we're going to pretend that that's 6, down through the bottom, up through the top. Wet it down, trim it up. All right, and then next we put on our hook. Obviously, the hook is very important, and these crossbred Hayabusas, it's the perfect hook for a Carolina rig in my book. And one of the reasons why when I was talking about the hook, I was saying like a light to medium wire hook, is because if you use a heavy duty hook, like a real heavy hook, number one, it adds weight to the presentation, which I don't think you want. And number two, it's going to take more pressure to get good hook penetration with a heavier hook, and that may cause you to break your leader more than you really want to, which is never. So we're going to do a San Diego jam knot on that hook too. 3, 6. All right, there we go. Up through the bottom, up through the top, tighten it down after wetting it. All right, there we go. We have a fully rigged Carolina rig minus the bait. This is a kind of a long leader, you can see here, but yeah, that's fairly standard. I mean, that leader length, I don't know exactly how long that is, but it's like 2 foot. That's really my all-time favorite length, probably 18 inches to 24 inches, that sort of thing. But real quick, I'm going to go to my bait wall over here, and I'm going to grab some good Carolina rig baits that you might want to consider for this technique. So hold on one second. All right, so in an effort to keep things simple for you at home, there's 2 different bait designs that I really like to lean on hard with the Carolina rig. One is a very standard, gold standard in bass fishing, is the stick bait. Okay, so a soft plastic stick bait, essentially a straight tail worm. It's got a little bit wider body, full of salt. This is the Z-Man Zinkers, okay? Stick bait is excellent on a Carolina rig, especially if you're fishing somewhat clear water where visibility is fairly high. But really, anytime you're throwing a Carolina rig, you can throw the stick bait and do pretty well. But again, it doesn't do a whole lot as you're dragging it. Hardly anything. It just kind of glides behind it, but it has a nice little shimmying fall as it falls. So every time you pull it, it kind of lifts up off the bottom and then shimmies down. One of the biggest misconceptions, though, of a Carolina rig is that it allows the bait to float up. Very few baits float up. Elastec baits will float up, but for the most part, it's just that natural glide. That's the attraction. It's not necessarily that they float up, even though that can be very, very good. But anyways, a stick bait, really, really good one. The other style of bait that I like to throw on a Carolina rig is a creature bait. Okay, something that is a crawfish imitation, or something that imitates some kind of like newt or salamander or something like that. And this one right here is a really good one. This is the Z-Man Gremlin. Okay, it's got these nice curl tails, looks like a crawfish. It's just a perfect profile for a Carolina rig creature bait. And so both of those baits work really good. Just intermittently, try each of them. I think they're both going to work great for you. I would say that during the spring, I like to go more creature bait. And during the summer, I like the stick bait more. That's really the only rhyme or reason that I can tell you. But real quick, because this is very important and we haven't quite finished rigging our Carolina rig, I want to show you this. So we've got the Gremlin here. So now we have to rig the soft plastic bait on our hook. This right here is going to be a Texas rig style of rigging this. So essentially what you do is you take your hook, put the hook point through the nose, and then you're going to pull it out through the chin about a 1/4 inch down, 1/4 to 1/2 inch down. All right, and then you're going to pull that through to the kink here. And once it gets past the kink, you turn it around like so. All right, so the hook point is pointing towards the bait now. And then you insert it into the bait like that. Now, if you're using Elastec materials like from Z-Man, I would just dig this into the center of the bait. That's what I suggest right there, because it's so soft that hook point is going to have no real issue coming through that plastic. But if it's traditional plastics, it's a little bit firmer and harder to get that hook set. So what you're going to do is you're going to bring that hook through the bait, and then you're going to lightly bury that hook point into the plastic like that. It's called Texposing. Now, the biggest thing when it comes to rigging your bait onto this hook for a Carolina rig is making sure that it is perfectly straight. If it is kinked like this bait is just going to spiral and just have a really weird, unnatural action. But if you have it perfectly straight like this, that bait is going to have a perfect glide and natural action as you pull the Carolina rig on the bottom. So anyways, we've done over 20 minutes of how to rig the Carolina rig and all the nuances. Again, I want to urge you guys to keep it simple. As you're learning this technique, just use the tackle that you have on hand. Keep it simple. You're going to catch some fish, and you're really going to enjoy this wonderful bass fishing technique that is just one of the best search presentations for bottom bouncing baits. Whether or not you have electronics on your boat, this is going to help you find the sweet spots on offshore structure and things like points and humps and stuff like that. So anyways, guys, if you have any questions at all, make sure you ask in the comment section below. Other than that, for the products that we talked about, I'm going to have all of those links in the description. So check that out. And otherwise, make sure you hit that subscribe button if you enjoy this content. I really appreciate it. Thank you guys very much. I'm going to see you on the water. Make sure you trust the process.